Welcome to Unshakable with Human Design, the show dedicated to helping entrepreneurs use human design to shift from hustle to flow without sacrificing results. Come here to become an unshakable human and build an unshakable business according to your human design. I'm your host, Nicole. Hello and welcome to Unshakable with Human Design. I'm your host, Nicole. We are talking today about the root center. It's going to be another episode on the centers. And this one we're going to focus on the root, which is at the bottom, the base of the body graph. It's a big square at the bottom, and we're going to dive into what that center really means, what it does, and how it shows up for a lot of people. This one is like an unsung hero. I feel like it doesn't get a lot of play. Nobody really talks about the root center, and the root center is powerful, whether you have it defined or undefined. It's a tricky one too, because it's almost like, I remember when I was in my certification, someone asked the question, they were like, I'm trying to see the good side of the root center. It all sounds bad. And it is not all bad. It is not all bad at all. Every single energy that we have has its beauty, but it also it's a difficult one. I think that's the commonality here. I think that's what she was really getting at, was just, this seems really hard to deal with. Like, there's a challenge. Some of them, it seems like, if you have a defined throat, that can seem like it's a bit of an easier go than having an undefined throat, because you feel like you have this access consistently to being able to speak. It's not necessarily entirely true that people with a defined throat have an advantage necessarily. It's all about your alignment. People who have an undefined throat that are in alignment with it, oh my God, can they be powerful when they do speak, when they do come out, when it is right for them, when they are following their real path. Wow, can they be powerful? But there can be this preconceived notion where it can be a little bit easier to understand how to work with the defined side than the undefined side, or vice versa. You might think it sounds easier to deal with an undefined solar plexus than dealing with a defined solar plexus. There's a clear distinction. With the root, not so much. And we'll get into that in just a second. First, I want to draw attention to the fact, before we get fully started, that we have a new offer that is available to you guys that I am so excited for. We have a new offer called the Human Design Lab. The Human Design Lab is an accessible membership program where you can sign up and be part of our community and learn about your human design. But really, the emphasis inside the lab is that you are living your design, that you are experimenting. That's why it's called the lab. You're in there to experiment. You're in there to share your experiments. You're in there to benefit from the other experiments that are going on around you. And we are providing you with information. We are providing you with support. We are providing you with ways of really integrating it. So not just digesting information, but actually being able to live your design. We have a VIP tier and we have a regular tier. And this was the key, was making this as accessible as possible, making this at a low price point where anybody could join, but also making it highly valuable. Because I don't know about you, but I don't want something that cost $5 that I'll never use. I would rather pay $30 for something that I'm in love with. But can I pay $1,000 for that same thing? Probably not. So we wanted to make it that really accessible price point. And I think that we hit the nail on the head with all of it. If you go to nicoleno.me/lab, you will be brought to the page there, and you'll be able to check out what we've got going on for you there. Let's dive into the root center. So this is one of the things that we'll be doing inside the lab. We will be diving into the centers. We'll be walking you through not just the information around it like you're getting here on the show, not like you could get on a blog, but taking you deeper into the information, giving you all of that deep information on it, taking you levels deeper, but then also giving you ways to very deliberately and intentionally integrate this and understand and learn to work with and bring your root center into a high expression, whether it be defined or undefined, whichever you have. We are bringing that into a higher expression and making sure that you are embodying the highest expression of that piece. So we do that every month. We have a change where we have one specific thing that we are diving into. And then we also go through all the gates. We have a lot more than that, but this is an example. So the root center is a pressure center and a motor. It's both. It is incredibly powerful. It's fuel. Really think about it like fuel. Now, it's like adrenalized pressure. It's the pressure to do, it's the pressure to evolve, it's the pressure to survive. There's a survival mechanism to it. So if you think about it, the root connects to the spleen, to the sacral, or to the emotional solar plexus. It has channels going in any of those directions. So that's telling you it has all of these possibilities of ways that it can be expressed. So survival and safety, doing, and then fueling the emotional process. So it can be fueling the survival mechanisms through the spleen, fueling the energy to do, fueling the emotional process going to the solar plexus. So this is how we start to work with it, right? Now, what it really translates into is stress. The root center feels like stress. And whether you have it defined or undefined is really about whether you are consistently able to deal with stress and have a consistent way of dealing with this feeling of high pressure situations. That defined root can be the way of dealing with high pressure situations. You have a fixed and consistent way of doing that. Now, if you have an undefined root, like me, I have an undefined root, then like anything else that's undefined, we are picking up that frequency from everything around us. So all of the pressure from all the other defined roots in the world, we are picking that up, that undercurrent of energy. To me, what it feels like, and I think the difference between a defined root and an undefined root is that one can feel very familiar, and to the other person, it feels like chaos. So the open root center, before it is brought into a high expression, before you've cleaned it out, before you've deconditioned it, it can feel like a lot because you're pulling in all of that fear. You're pulling in all of that, everything that's going on, that undercurrent of energy that's happening out in the world of, I got to get it done. I got to go. We got to get this done. We've got to evolve. We've got to fix this thing, because it's so tied to survival. So the root center, when you have it defined, you're going to have this consistent way of dealing with that pressure. You're going to be used to it. It also can be very creative fuel, the root center. So when you have it undefined, it's just going to feel like maybe you have a little less of a handle on it, just the same way that all of the other centers. The game is figuring out when energy is yours and when it's not. When are you picking up somebody else's thing or something from the frequency of outside of you? I look at the open centers. Where are you being driven by your openness? When you're acting from the openness, that's the not self. That's the fear. It's like the tail wagging the dog. If I'm operating out of my undefined root center, I will be pulled off my alignment so quickly, and it feels terrible. You can download our deconditioning guide as well. But the deconditioning guide, the not self of the root center, is basically, it says, I've got to get this done so I can be free of the pressure. If I could only get this off my list, if I could only get to this next level, if I could only do this, if I could only do this, then I can relax. But the list never gets smaller. You never quite reach that level where you're like, finally, it's time to relax. Just never get there. It's just, there's always something else right behind it until you learn to work with it, until you learn to decondition it. Now, I see plenty of very conditioned, defined roots as well. We just look at them more as like an unhealthy. And usually they're in this like overactive state. And there are other ways that this shows up. And this is why in the Human Design Lab, we're taking a whole month to go into these specific aspects, because you can gloss over these things so quickly and so easily that when we deep dive into them, you get such a deep understanding. I know when my undefined root is kicked into gear. I'll just be like, I think my root is defined in the transits. And I'll look up my transit chart, and sure enough, my root is defined. I can tell that subtle difference. Why? Because I have tuned my awareness so acutely to the different aspects of my design. I know what I feel like. I know what me feels like. And I know what the outside world having an influence on me, conditioning, feels like. So there's a nuance to this. And I do think that this is probably the most nuanced, where I think we have a lot of very unhealthy root centers and a lot of conditioned people running out of that pressure, because it's pressure. And what pressure does is it does fuel all of the energy going through that body graph from the bottom. It fuels everything. And one of the deeper aspects of the root center is that the channels of the root center going to the sacral are what we call format energy. And they start to have an effect on the entire chart. So it's an incredibly powerful center. And it's so important to understand it and to understand its effects on you and your chart. However, most people don't go there. And this doesn't seem like a terribly sexy center. But people who have a defined root, y'all have a lot of energy. You got a lot of energy to do, to create, to move. It's just, I've brought this up before, but my friend Tracy O'Malley, she always says, what's the come from? What's driving that doing? That's the nuance with the root center that you have to learn to play with. Because when the come from is wrong from the root center, and you're allowing the action to come out of whether it's defined or undefined, and it's purely coming from that place, that's where you burn out. That's where you're not listening to your sacral if you're a generator. You're overworking if you are a projector. If you have a defined root and you're a projector and you're going, and you're not listening to that undefined sacral, basically that space, which you don't have the off switch. So the other motors take over. If you're an energy projector, it's so easy for energy projectors to, they refer to it as like becoming slaves, where you run yourself ragged to be useful, to be recognized, and only to find out that you're just going to collapse at the end of the day. That comes from allowing something other than your real strategy and authority to guide you. So these are the nuances we're talking about, and understanding it's not just having a defined root or an undefined root, it's how does that play with the rest of your design, with all the rest of the pieces in it. And that's why we created the lab, was to start to break that experimentation down and to ask you really good questions and to have you focusing on really good things and sharing those experiments and those findings with other people. It's a super amazing space, and I'm so excited to bring it to you guys. I hope that you found this helpful. I hope that you're able to look at your chart, see if you have a defined root or an undefined root, and how is it showing up for you? What resonated with you from this episode? And I hope that this sheds some light on the motors can be tricky, because we have the root center, which is a motor. The sacral is a motor. The emotional center, the solar plexus, is a motor. And the ego will center is a motor. 4 motors in the body graph, all move energy, all have the potential to manifest, which is really how we look at motors. It's energy in motion. So they have the potential to manifest. The motors can be tricky because it feels like they all should be fueling us, but it's about the makeup of the rest of our design that determines which motors are supposed to do what their job is, and who's in charge, who's the lead in your design. And that's what's important for you to start breaking down and start understanding, to start to truly embody this and integrate it in your life. I hope you found this helpful. I hope that this inspired you to go deeper into your design. I hope this inspired you to at least consider joining us inside the Human Design Lab. We would love to have you there and part of our community. It is a fabulous space, and I can't wait for all of you to join. Please go to nicolelano.me/lab, and that will take you to the info page where you can learn all about it. Now, remember, everyone, in order to have an unshakable business, you must first become an unshakable human. I hope we helped you on that journey a little bit more today with this episode, and I hope you join us next time in the next episode, where we can help you more on your journey of becoming unshakable with human design. I'll see you in the next one. If you love this episode and you're a fan of the show, please show us the love on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you're listening to the show, and leave us a review. And if you'd like to connect with other entrepreneurs on their human design journey, join our free Facebook community, Human Design for Entrepreneurs. Go to nicolelano.me/podcast links to join the group, book a human design reading with me, or access our free human design resources. We'll see you there.